Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. The spate of killings in Zamfara State found its way back in the headlines following a protest held in Abuja by a small group of Nigerians to condemn the killing of innocent people by armed bandits. 24 hours after the protest, the federal government banned gold mining in the state, which is the, well, supposedly, reportedly, the primary cause of the killings in the area, according to intelligence reports, and also deployed Operation Puff Adder, a full-scale security operative against the bandits. It didn't end there. On Thursday, the president also had a meeting with his security chiefs to end the violence.
The security meeting we've just had with Mr. President today is to review the strategy that we are adopting in confronting the security issues in Zamfara State, especially, and other places nationwide.
Well, I mean, the authorities say they are reviewing the strategy, and the military have since launched what they call Operation Kunana 4, and the police have launched Operation Povada to address the security challenge in that part of the country, in Zamfara, in Katsina State, in southern Kaduna. Joining us now to speak on the latest update on the situation in that part of the country, in the Northwest generally, is journalist and one of the leaders of the protest that Nigerians, either in Zamfara or elsewhere, deserve a better life. KADARIA Ahmed. KADARIA, good to see you.
Hello, Ruben.
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to come on the morning show.
Thank
now,
you.
for somebody who has been called an apostate, who has had somebody going on Twitter saying that, you know, you deserve the death sentence for leading a protest, you look quite relaxed.
Well,
I must commend your courage.
But you know, the work we do has meant that over the years, one has had to develop a thick skin. Because to be honest, if we were worried about what people said and if you were sort of fearful of threats, then the chances are you won't do what we do. And I'm talking purely even from a journalistic point of view. So yeah, people will talk. It's, I think, part of the risks of speaking truth to power and not being conventional and refusing to conform and to be quiet is that people will threaten you, people will challenge you, and you just have to just, you know, stay focused on what it is that you're trying to do and shut out all the noise, if you like.
Have you had to take some security precautions? Because when somebody says, oh, this is an apostate, she's a Muslim, now she converted to Christianity, it's like, you know, putting you out there. Well, yeah, I mean, exposing you to danger.
That is the fastest way to get somebody killed, honestly, and I think it was done deliberately. But I've refused to even speak about my faith deliberately, because I think doing so then essentially almost justifies what they're trying to do. I mean, members of my family have found it necessary to talk. So my younger sister has sort of done an interview with Sahara, but I've personally refused to address it, and I think I'm going to continue not addressing it, because otherwise you're then you're almost justifying their right to do what they do. But when you sort of criticize somebody for a lack of leadership, a lack of governance, particularly in a society where, as Muslims, we believe that this is a trust from God and that Allah is the person that gives power, and when he does, you're supposed to take it seriously. And as citizens, we point to a leader's failure, and the response is to start attacking the person and the individual. Then you know you've hit a nerve. You know that that person knows deep down inside that what you've said is probably correct, and their only response is to get personal, you know? So it's fine. The results are speaking for themselves. I'm very, very happy with the response we got. The instant decision by the federal government to take some key actions has started, you know, getting us some real results. So people on the ground are talking about the fact that a few people who've been kidnapped have been rescued. Armed bandits have been, you know, killed. Some have been arrested. And so there is a serious security operation taking place there, and we are grateful for that. But beyond the security, we do not think that the problem of Zamfara can be solved through security alone. First of all, it's a very murky conflict. So it's one of those conflicts where it's been going on for so long that it's very difficult to even unravel the causes, you know, and say this is the one particular thing. So the government says they believe that mining has something to do with it. It sounds about right, because there's an element of people being dispossessed of land. So you have to think in terms of, okay, it must be a land grab. And I'm sure that is probably a factor. But you can't also take away from the fact that for 8 years we had rustling by, you know, armed bandits who've basically pauperized the Fulani community in Zamfara by basically taking their livelihood away from them. Because we're finding that a lot of the people who are doing the killings are young Fulani boys. And a few of them apparently after arrest will tell you, well, we have nothing else to do. So then you've got, of course, the farmers who are now being dispossessed by these bandits who cannot farm. So there are some real issues that need to be looked at. Plus, my state is the poorest state in the whole of Nigeria. We're the least educated. Poorer
than Ekiti?
Yes, absolutely. It's right at the bottom. It's the indices for development are, you know, at par with places like Afghanistan, which is at war. Worse than Borno, which has been facing an armed insurgency. I mean, if you look at the exam results, for example, and the sort of amount of people who go into primary school, who graduate from primary school and then take common entrance exams, the numbers are abysmal, right? So all of those things are sort of part of the reason why a conflict like the sort that we're seeing in Zamfara will actually take root and actually thrive. And so what we are saying and what we want is for the government, yes, it's important that in the immediate term that you provide security, that people are able to go about their businesses. But long term and medium term, there are really some serious issues that need to be tackled. And this is why we are very angry with the people who've been in power successively in Zamfara State, because it is a place that had huge potential. When I was growing up, we had oil mills, we had ginneries, we had a sweet factory, we had a sugar factory. You know, we had so many industries. It was a thriving place. I think probably apart from Kano, it was probably the most industrialized. I mean, the town, the capital city, Gusau itself, was probably the most industrialized state in the north. And for that reason, you also had a very multi-ethnic population. So people from all over the country came and settled. There are people from places like Ogbomosho, who are actually now more or less like citizens of Zamfara. And all of that meant it was a very thriving place, very small but thriving place. All of that is gone now. And
let me ask you about citizens' participation in governance, because you led this protest.
You know what? It was funny. I didn't actually. I was part of a protest that was set up by some amazing young girls. A girl called Mariam Ado and a girl called Taye Husseini. I think it's really important they get the credit for this,
perhaps right? Your statement about the governor that put you up as
I guess.
So let's talk about citizen participation in governance, because we have seen, you know, in recent times in Africa, how much power the citizens have. I mean, in Zimbabwe, in Algeria, recently in Sudan, even though that is still on and not concluded. But you were part of this protest about senseless killings and destruction. And there are those who criticized you for doing this.
Yes.
How would you describe Nigerians? Are they docile?
Okay, so I think politicians have really done a number on us. I think they have exploited our fault lines to the point where we are not able to come together as a people and confront their bad governance. When they are in authority and they are busy dividing the Commonwealth among themselves and marrying each other's children and going to big weddings, it doesn't matter that they are North or South or that they're Igbo and Hausa and Christian. The only time those things become issues is when regular Nigerians are used as an army to fight the people who are criticizing them. So it's a problem. It's a serious problem, because as a people, if we're not able to get past those differences and come together as a collective, we won't be able to hold our political class, you know, to account. And the problem of Nigeria is the political class. I am clear about it. I know people like to criticize followers, and they say, well, followers also have responsibilities. But poverty has been weaponized in Nigeria to such an extent that people are so focused on eking out a living, on doing sort of, you know, basic stuff, that it is very difficult for them to confront people in authority. There's fear. There's abuse of state agencies. If you look at the sort of things the police gets up to on our streets, all of those things mean that an average person really stands no chance of confronting government and getting away with it. And so it's understandable, I think. But I think we need to civic education is really important. We need to start letting our people know that these people work for us. They're not, you know, they go around being big men and throwing their weight around. Without us, they are nothing. And I think if we can just get the mindset of the citizen to begin to shift and understand that these people are not that important. You make them important. And so if you send them to do a job and they're not doing it well, I mean, can you imagine if you are here working for Arise and you are constantly not doing your job and the management of Arise is too scared to talk to you? I mean, how does that work? You're turning things on its head. So it's the same thing. We send you to govern, we send you to serve. And if you're not serving, we should be able to tell you that you're not serving. And if you're truly interested in your community, then you should be able to listen and change your ways.
Well, let's talk about somebody who was sent to do a job, Governor Abdulaziz Yari of Zamfara State. Yes. Back in June last year, he made a public outcry to say, I'm not in charge of security. In fact, I'm abdicating my title as Chief Security Officer of the state. He said it bold and clear that I've provided operational vehicles and what they need, but nobody takes orders from me. But you said he's the most useless governor in Nigeria.
So let me ask you, if you have a governor who in 8 years doesn't sit in the capital city of the state that he's governing and spends a large chunk of his time in Abuja and traveling abroad because he says he's the chairman of the Governors Forum. If you have a governor who did not provide basic primary health care for his people, and they had a meningitis outbreak, and his response to that was to say, the reason his people are getting meningitis and are dying is because they sinned against God and God is punishing them.
Fornication, he
said. Yes, exactly. I didn't want to use the word, but you know what I mean. If you have a governor who basically says, well, you know what, I can't provide security for my people. I can't lead because I don't have the power, and yet doesn't have the moral compass to then resign, because he's essentially saying a strategic part of his job, he can't do it. But he doesn't resign as chief financial officer. He's happy to keep collecting the security votes from the state. Can you tell me why I would respect and consider that governor effective? I can't. And I'm not suggesting, because like you saw in that protest, we also called out Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. So this is not us trying to deflect the problem to where it doesn't belong. We have seen governors and the role that they play despite the limitations of the Constitution, because technically they are the chief security officers of their state. If you look at a place like Kano, for example, Lagos, for example, which is where we live, and see the sort of active, proactive way in which the government of Lagos State gets involved with the security of this place. And then you look at a place like Zamfara, he talks about providing vehicles. We haven't seen them. Go and ask the people of Zamfara whether they've seen, patrol vehicles anywhere. We haven't seen them. In fact, his latest thing that he did, which was 2-3 weeks ago before we undertook this protest, was to say he was calling, I think, snake charmers and magicians, to sort out. How can I take such a governor seriously? I'm asking you, honestly, in your opinion, how would you take a man seriously?
Your statement about the governor.
Yes.
And also your calling out President Buhari generated a lot of reactions on social media.
I know.
One, there are persons who say, well, yes, Abdulaziz Yari may not be an excellent governor, but perhaps there are even more useless governors in
you
other
know
parts
what?
of Nigeria.
And then I leave their citizens to pass that judgment. I cannot talk about other places. All I can talk about is for now, you know, my focus is on my people and what has been going on in Zamfara, because it is one of the most underreported conflicts in the world. This is the thing. It's even difficult for anybody to tell you just how many people have died and the sort of damage that has been done, for the simple reason that until this happened, even the media was barely interested in what was going on in Zamfara. And so sometimes you have to do things to shock people. And that's, if that is what it has taken for the attention of the people to turn to Zamfara and what is going on, then I'm really happy I did it.
But with President Buhari,
yes,
you know, some of the young people who have been responding to you, they said when you were interviewing presidential candidates, that they noticed, well, that's their opinion, that you were very friendly with President Buhari and Vice President Yemi Osinbajo.
What?
That you even, you know, asked them soft questions. In their view, that's what they say. I'm just quoting.
No, but
so
let's
when
be,
you now called him out, that what happened?
Hang on.
Yes.
You realize I was a hero after the Buhari interview. That these same people were using memes with my face and praising me to high heaven. They were very political in this country. We are not used to people who do non-partisan journalism. Everybody assumes that you must be this way, or the people project themselves on you. I've had a long career as a journalist, starting from the BBC in London, where I spent about 12 years doing what I do. Upon coming back to Nigeria, I ran perhaps one of the most controversial but also leading investigative newspaper in Nigeria called Next. There's no one we didn't take on when Next was alive. After that, I did a program called Straight Talk, which was the Nigeria's equivalent of Hard Talk. I had people one-on-one. So there are people who are only discovering my work now in this circle of election. And so for that, I'll forgive them. I forgive them because all they're seeing is a little bit of what I do, and they jump into conclusions. But I am telling you that I can come up with tweets from these same people who at the end of the PMB Osinbajo interview were full of praises for my professionalism, for how I handled the interview. And then after we did the Atiku Obi interview, it switched. So, you know, when you just do what you do, your work will speak for you eventually. You understand what I'm saying? This is not something that I'm going to stop doing. Journalism is in my blood. I was 7 when I realized I wanted to be a journalist. So I'm going to be a journalist till the day I die. And I have a body of work. You understand what I mean? So my name is not going to be determined by one interview. There are people who will politicize it, and it is fine. Like I said, you don't do what I do if you really pay attention to noise.
Quite correct.
Well, one of the cardinal promises of President Muhammadu Buhari is security.
Yes.
And after the elections, we have seen a spate of insecurity, not just in Zamfara, the Northwest, and in fact, some other parts of the country. What do you think that we're doing wrongly? What do you think that President Muhammadu Buhari is doing wrongly? I mean, there have been calls for him to sack.
Well, I was about to say, you know, I think, look, like I said, again, a bit like I said, you know, if you were not doing what Arise management asked you to do, I'm sure you'll be out on your ears. It's the same thing. If you've employed people
be out of commission
to do certain things, and it is clear that they're not doing it, or at least their efforts, you know, we can't tell. It's possible they're trying. It's possible, but maybe they're not up to it. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So there's nothing wrong with saying, look, I've given you 3 years, 4 years to try and get a handle on this problem, and you haven't. I'd like to bring in a new set of people. Now, to be fair to them, I've spent time in the Northeast, for example, and the people of Maiduguri totally and completely adore this government, because they will tell you that the problems they had with Boko Haram have totally changed, you know, from what they were then. But the point is that security isn't only about the insurgency, internal security. So if you've got killings in rivers, if you've got Kaduna, you know, people, sectarian killings in Kaduna, if you've got, then there's certainly a major problem. And so we have to find a way to address that issue. And I think it's a two-track thing. I honestly, genuinely believe that there's a degree of healing that needs to take place. So I know we talk about the fact that security is a big problem for Muhammadu Buhari, but I also think actually one of the ways he can help himself is if he becomes a unifying figure in Nigeria right now. Nigeria is really, really deeply divided at this point in time. And I think those kind of things feed into some of the issues that we face. I would like for him to think in terms of security, unity, and then maybe the economy. And he is in his final term in office. So hopefully, what it means is that he does not have to placate any politicians. And he can take decisions based on what works for Nigeria rather than what works for his party or what works for the people who sort of put together a coalition to put him into power. That is my hope. And that is what I keep calling on him to do. Because I think right now we are quite broken. You know, there are conversations that need to take place in this country that people are scared to have.
Such as?
How broken we are, how divided we are. And the fact that everything is now reduced to where you come from, the religion. And like I said, it's ironic that regular people are having these fights, but politicians are not. You know, but they exploit these lines, you know, very effectively. And they've succeeded in basically dividing us. I'm lucky. You know, I'm married to a Yoruba man. So I kind of have a leg in here, right? And I sort of sit down with Yoruba people. I have a lot of, like, very close Igbo friends. So in many ways, the way I move around Nigeria, not many people have that privilege. So if I have a leg in the south and a leg in the north, and I'm able to sort of sit down and have, you know, frank conversations with people. And when we are in our safe spaces, you'll be shocked at the things we say about people who are not supposedly from our place.
Let me ask you a question about women.
Yes.
Particularly women in politics.
Yes.
Amina Mohammed was at the, you know, Amina Mohammed, the
UN
Under Secretary General.
Yes, my big sister.
She was in Abidjan recently at the event by Mo Ibrahim Foundation.
Yes.
And she was saying, well, in Nigeria, it's not a glass ceiling that exists for women in politics. It's actually a concrete ceiling that we need to break. Yes. And that was proven in this last election. Take the National Assembly. In
the
terms
numbers
of
are
representation,
diminishing, isn't
by
it?
50%.
Yes. Indeed,
you know. But what do you think we can do? Because we've hosted so many women in politics on this program. They had great hopes before the 2019 elections. But instead of recording greater success, we saw a further devaluation in terms of women representation in public life.
So there's a few things going on, and people are not going to like me saying this. The majority of politicians in Nigeria go into power for state capture. People run for office not because they genuinely care about their communities and to look after their communities, but because being in office guarantees a certain lifestyle, a certain income. Nigeria has got to be the only place in the world where the richest people are people who are not inventors, they're not businessmen, they are people who all their life have held public office. It's a problem. And so that, yes, so that tends to sort of influence the mindset that you have. Because if you genuinely care about your communities, you can't be ignoring 50% of that community. Particularly when statistics have shown and research has shown time and time again that when you empower women, you actually lift communities up and things become better. And so that is part of the reason why it is very difficult for women to make a breakthrough. I also think women need to stop playing. So the rules are all set by men. So they meet at midnight, at 2 o'clock, where basically culturally, they make sure that if you are sort of seen out at that time, you get like stigmatized and all of that. And so that's one way of, and then the money politics, because a lot of women don't have financial independence. And so it's very difficult because, politics cost money. And so you need someone who has money to sort of support you and all of that. I just generally believe that this is not a journey that will happen overnight. It's a long road, 20, 30 years work. but it is fine. We can lay the foundation now, and part of it is ensuring that we educate everybody, both men and women, and that women are given opportunities for economic power. These are some of the ways in which you can begin to make a difference, you know, long term. It won't happen overnight.
Well, let me ask you, I mean, there's this renewed vigor now by the presidency, security agencies, to quell the insecurity in Zamfara after your protest. But this is not the first time we're seeing troops deployed to Zamfara or attempts to stop this. So let me ask you if you'll be returning to the protest lines.
Absolutely.
In Abuja or even perhaps in Zamfara.
Absolutely. If this particular drive, we see that there is dying, and that, you know, the insecurity is about to kickstart again, we will take to the streets again. That is my job as a citizen, and I think that should be the job of every citizen, to hold people in authority to account by reminding them again and again that this is what we elected you to do, and security is a primary responsibility of government. You know, we can't take arms and defend ourselves. If we did, there would be chaos. You understand what I'm saying? So we elected a government to basically provide security, and if they fail, then we will take to the streets again to remind them again that they have a responsibility. But like I said, beyond sort of the immediate security things, and one other thing I need to add, you need to understand that there's a conflict economy. And part of government responsibility to also look at that, there are people making money from these killings, those who are selling arms. And a whole, you know, there's a whole, I think, if you probably value chain that is sustained.
A negative one.
Yes, that is sustained, you know, by war and by conflict. And part of what we have to do is try and see if we can disrupt that chain. And so I was happy to see the president visiting neighboring countries, because it is true we have very porous borders. And as you know, we are also paying the price for the collapse of Libya. So a lot of small arms are sort of have made their way down, you know, into our country. There's a few mercenaries. There's a whole bunch of things going on. And so I would shut down sort of the gaps in our border security. I would move military installations that are inside town out. I don't see why we need, for example, barracks in Ikeja. You know, at a time...
Well, at the time, it was, that barracks
that's
was
at a time, it might have been.
It was on the outskirts.
Yes, at a time. But right now, it's in the middle of a city. You understand what I mean? There are soldiers in there. What are they doing there? Why don't you get your soldiers to secure your borders and then equip your police to do internal policing, which is what they're supposed to do?
Well, one of the fallouts of your protest is the new, you know, widespread knowledge among other Nigerians that we have gold mines in Zamfara.
Yes.
We have gold mines in Kano.
People didn't know.
We have iron ore, we have bauxite, we have all kinds of mineral resources. And then, you know, other Nigerians are saying, look, all of this is up there, and everybody is just talking about the oil in the Niger Delta. Well, do you have any additional information on this?
Yeah, I mean, the whole of the north, actually. You need to see the map. I mean, I've been privileged. There is actually a map that was produced by the Ministry of Solid Minerals, which kind of shows you each place, the sort of things that we're sitting on. So you need to see what's in Niger State. You know, it's mind-boggling, you know? So we are sitting on wealth. The problem is, I think, you know, structurally, we keep talking about constitutional reform. And the truth is, if without doing that, it is very difficult to unlock the value that we have in Nigeria. So at the moment, there's this weird arrangement. Excuse me a minute, my nose is sniffing. We have this weird arrangement where the federal government issues mining licenses at the federal level, but state governments control land. So you get a mining license, there's no guarantee you can just go and start mining. You then have to apply to the state government to give you the rights to the land. You understand what I'm saying? And it's just all very convoluted in my view. And so when we keep talking about restructuring, part of what would be great is if states own the rights to their minerals and they just pay royalty. Like we've all said, you know, even with petroleum. That is a sensible arrangement that allows people to do what they like. But I am even concerned about, because mining can be damaging. I don't know if you remember how illegal mining led to the lead poisoning of
Yes.
my people again in Zamfara.
Too.
Again,
Yes.
right? So part of the reforms include making sure, and the thing is, if you exploit this properly, what you then do is you put standards in place. You put protection for your people so that if mining is done, the environment is taken into account, the health of your people is taken into account, and you can bring best global practice to what you're doing. But as long as it's still this shady thing that you're doing, then you don't get the best of it in terms of, you know, the resources. They don't come to you, the people, the government. Your people keep getting hurt. And you end up with cowboys. It's like being in the Wild Wild West. People trying to exploit these resources illegally, legally, but in ways that are damaging.
Well, thank you, Kadaria.
Before we let you go, I have one quick question for you. Are there plans for KADARIA AHMED to go into politics in Nigeria? Perhaps the first will be governor in Zamfara?
No.
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 Okay.
No. It's more important to be out here giving them hell.
and leading the protesters at the barricades.
There's enough politicians in Nigeria.
Sure.
Yes. We need more active citizens.